Hey, thanks for checking out this video. My name is Zach, and on my channel, I mostly talk about science fiction and fantasy books, with occasional sidetracks into personal development, business, comics, and manga. But also, I'm starting this new series where I talk about some of my other interests outside of just books. And mostly that's stories in the form of movies. So continuing this episode 2 of my weekend recap of what I watched this past weekend is talking about my movies and what I finally saw, which to start things off is, yes, I finally saw Sinners. So that was our big watch on Friday. And I have to say, yeah, it was great. I see what the hype is about. It was a 5 out of 5 for me on the Letterboxd rating, and I absolutely love Sinners. I thought the cinematography and the story was just so well done. The whole first half of the movie was, I was totally immersed in the world. I was thrown back to the 1600s in the South, in Mississippi. It was just so drawn in. And that's what I like about fantasy books. I usually like that world building, that just you can imagine yourself in these fantasy worlds. And in the movie, I was just totally in that world. The characters were so real. And then, of course, I guess there's a little bit spoilers, obviously, and Sinners has been out for now, so I think it's kind of a spoiler. But if not, the big twist, but it's kind of foreshadowed. So it's not really too much of a twist, but the second half of the movie is kind of a vampire action thriller. And it was just, even that was great. I love the take on these vampire creatures and how our main characters of Smoke and Stack and the family around them deal with these vampires. And you have some of the kind of vampire tropes of need to be let in and they're trying to convert them. And it was just the dynamic of this happening in kind of a segregation era, 1600s American South. It was just such a different dynamic than you normally see from a vampire movie or just a period piece. Yes, I love that mashup of genres. And just like I mentioned, the world was so believable, so lived in. It was everything, the cinematography, the way it went from widescreen to full screen at times and just drew you into the fights. And a really great start to the weekend, I guess you could say, with a 5 out of 5 for me with Sinners. Next up on Saturday, we watched some things in our normal genre, which is kind of international cinema, I guess you could say. And we watched Stuntman, which is a new movie from Hong Kong, and it's a love letter to Hong Kong. So this was also a highlight of the weekend for me. Myself, I got into Hong Kong and Chinese cinema way back in high school, seeing those early VCDs of kind of the golden age of Hong Kong. You've got the Jackie Chan films, Young and Dangerous, kind of all the romantic comedies with Andy Lau and Sammy Chang. So that was what I was kind of raised on. So this movie, Stuntman, is a love letter and throwback to that era. It chronicles this action choreographer who's drawn back to one last film, kind of like that, formula for like heist movies. It's one last heist to get the band together, and uses kind of that framework of one last movie. And he gets together with some of his old movie set friends, and they make one final film, with the twist being the main action star is our main character's protege from the very first scene when he has a tragic accident on set. So our main character is dealing with the trauma and the guilt of kind of his personality of kind of sacrifice at all costs for the sake of the movie. And we're seeing also the kind of dichotomy of the current generation of action stars, where they're more concerned about everyone doing the movie safely, which of course it's that shift of how things were done back then versus how things are done now, and kind of the generational shift of Hong Kong cinema and just cinema in general. So it was really cool. I just love seeing these throwbacks to the old style through the new lens, and this old versus new. And our main character was, it wasn't a perfect movie for me. I would give it like a 4 out of 5 because I was just so frustrated with the main character, because he's, it's well written character, because he's stuck in his ways and he just refuses to sacrifice for his daughter for the sake of the film, and just he has to have his vision. And you can kind of see those kind of people, those driven, hard-nosed, won't change their views sort of people. And so it was well done, but also just frustrating seeing that. So it was still a great movie. I really love that one, Stuntman, out of Hong Kong. And then switching that up, we watched another Hong Kong movie, Death Notice. And this one was also a little bit of a throwback film to classic Hong Kong cinema. It was kind of that cop thriller kind of genre, which may be best known for like Infernal Affairs, where there's this kind of cat and mouse game between not really gangsters in this one, but a criminal element and the police. And the twist on this one is Death Notice, like Death Note, the anime and manga, where maybe not like that. He's not writing down the death note, but people receive this notice that they're going to die, and then it actually happens. So the killer that the police are trying to catch is kind of giving them a heads up that, yeah, this person has to die for this reasons. And then they're trying to, solve and uncover who this person is. And it was good. It's got a lot of big name stars in it, like Louis Koo, but it just got a little bit convoluted towards the end. I was trying to follow who was doing what, and so it kind of petered out at the end, even though the premise was cool and I thought it was going to be a great film with the big names attached and kind of that classic Hong Kong cinema format. It just sort of fell apart towards the end, and I just got lost of who's doing what and what's this twist. And yeah, it didn't really stick the landing, I guess you could say. So to me, it was like a 3.5 out of 5. Next up, we switched countries to South Korea and the new Don Lee movie, which also, based on the trailers and based on what I saw just reading the description of it, was Holy Night Demon Hunters. So this one, it sounded like everything that I was going to really enjoy in an action film from South Korea. Don Lee, from like the Outlaw series, where he just punches the bad guys. He's kind of like a superhero almost. And the premise from the trailers is Don Lee punching demons. So I was like, hey, I'm all on board. This is going to be great. It's just going to be a fun kind of popcorn flick, summer action movie with Don Lee punching demons and the whole 9 yards. But the film, had this weird like found footage. So I'm not really sure how to describe the genre, but they're demon hunters, as the name implies, but they're also, and I don't think it ever even explained in the movie, they're recording the demon hunting. So one of the, like this 3-man trio with Don Lee at the helm, one of them is an exorcist, but the other one is like a YouTuber, and they're like recording it for, I don't even know why, but they're recording this. And so you got a lot of angles of, it'll be through the lens of the camera, and then we'll see them fighting. And then it was like found footage and fighting, and then characters, and it was just kind of a mess. And it was on exorcisms, and honestly, it was mediocre, like a 3 out of 5. I felt like I wanted to watch some of the actually really good exorcism movies that I've seen lately out of South Korea, like Exuma and Dr. Cheon and The Lost Talisman. Two really fun, similar but slightly different. Exuma is really good. I really loved it. On a little bit like a darker horror kind of exorcism action movie, whereas Dr. Cheon and The Lost Talisman is a little more fantastical exorcism. Both really good that I highly recommend. And unfortunately, recommend it more than the new Don Lee film, Holy Night Demon Hunters. And then lastly, to wrap up the weekend's movies, yes, it's a marathon, and this one we went back to mainland China for the latest Zhang Yimou's film, Full River Red. So this one was also pretty good, and it was a good highlight, a good way to end the weekend. We watched it on Sunday, so yesterday, recording this on Monday after work. But Full River Red was very artsy, and Zhang Yimou, being this talented director who's known for all his other work, you can really tell the extra touches that went into the design and cinematography of this film. And then maybe if you've seen Full River Red, the choices of the audio were a little weird, and I couldn't tell if it was a good thing or a bad thing. But to talk about this in cinematography, it was really interesting shot. It reminded me a lot of, unfortunately, comparisons to other movies like Shadow, because a lot of the film is shot in the dark, so it has this very cast, and it's kind of also a bit of a cat and mouse game where you don't really know who's doing what, and who's like a double agent, triple agent, and how they're sort of backstabbing each other. So it's kind of a political thriller, not much action, even though there are a few fights, but it's also the genre tag was comedy, and it has like a weird like, yeah, it has comedic elements, especially in the early parts of it. So it's a little bit like sarcastic and funny here and there, even though the whole movie is investigating this murder that happened in this palace. And it's all like political palace intrigue and these different factions inside the palace. And honestly, to me, it was a lot of characters to keep up with. My wife was able to follow along better because it is based on a lot of historical figures. So if you know some of the context of Chinese history, maybe you can follow along better. But I was getting a little confused of who's following what, and the Jin and the Song warring factions, and which general is doing what. And General Sun is our main character, and we're following a couple main characters, but it switches a bit. So it's a lot to keep track of, but it does keep you hooked. So it was pretty good. I only knocked a couple stars only because maybe the ending was a little different. So it goes a little bit away from this comedic, like cat and mouse political thriller, and has actually very well done. I like the kind of nationalistic, and I wouldn't say patriotic, it's more national pride of rooting out corruption. So as the movie's called, they recite the poem that the deceased general, they finally figure out at the end, this poem, Full River Red, and the way they do it is just shot really well. And that's the way I love the cinematography. The visuals are great. Throughout the movie, they kind of follow the characters in these transitional scenes. So it all takes place in the palace. And then the interesting choice from Imo, the director, was how it'll show the characters walking the hallways and these interesting shots of the characters just traversing throughout the palace. And then this final scene, they do kind of like a game of telephone, which I guess is what they did back then, where the prime minister would give an order, he would say something, and then through the line, the soldiers would memorize it and say like the one line to the next soldier, and they would say to the next soldier, and eventually got to the outdoor troops, and they all recited to this thundering, recitation of the poem that the prime minister is giving on the inside of the palace. And yeah, it was just really cool. It was really well done. I really enjoyed it. It's a really long movie too. Speaking of reallys, it's like 2.5 hours. So Full River Red was our final cap for the weekend, and just with the time, that's all we had time for with some of these longer films. So really pretty good weekend actually for films. A lot of good stuff this weekend. Highlight, again, to recap, being Sinners. Maybe second would be a tie between Stuntman and Full River Red. And then a little bit lower on the tier list was Holy Night Demon Hunters with Don Lee and Death Notice. And then to pivot from that, just to give sort of a vlog style update of what I'm also reading outside of book reviews I'm doing and upcoming book reviews. I finished volume 4 of After God, the manga, and it's pretty cool. I really enjoy learning more about this world that they're building in After God and what's going on with the IPOs and the research institutes. But the only, complaint or critique, I guess I would say at this point, is our main female character, who we were following in like the first issue that we learn about, who's got these like weird god eyes. Like, she hasn't even been around for the whole, I think, like last 2 volumes. So volume 3 and 4 have all been following the snake god, and that's been this main kind of focus. So I'm hoping, we just saw her towards the end of volume 4. So it seems like they're finally pivoting back to the other members of the Institute. So it's good, and I'm liking learning about the world, but I just want to see some other characters besides just the snake god. But it's good. I do recommend After God. I think it's a cool seinen manga. And then on book fronts, I'm about 70% now done with book 2 of The First Law. I'm reading, listening to Before They're Hanged. And yeah, it's really good. Not to spoil the review because that's definitely going to be coming soon. But I'm really enjoying the second book of The First Law, much more than the first one. The characters just feel richer. Maybe just I'm listening to it at a different mindset from when I listen to the play itself. But really enjoying The First Law, and I've got 2 new library holds that just came through, so I'm gonna try and finish up the Before They're Hanged either tomorrow or the next day, because I've really got to get on my next 2 books, which are luckily shorter. They're only about 12 hours of audiobooks each, so hopefully can burn through those in the 14 days that my Libby hold is due back at the library. So that's my weekend update of what I've been watching and where I'm at on reading, finishing up The First Law, book 2, Before They're Hanged. So thanks for watching this vlog style weekend movie review update, and have a great day.